So just wanted to say welcome to those that are visiting today. I wanted to acknowledge that earlier. I wanted to say that. Thank you for being out. And so what I wanted to do today briefly was to review a little bit some things that we've been talking about. The first big thing to know is, and certainly depending on your personality type, I know some people are just really competitive and hard on themselves. So as we ask these questions, remember, it's supposed to be just for fun. If you don't know the answer, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up. And so just know we'll kind of alternate. I know more of us are here on the right, on my right than left, but just know that, hey, that is okay if you don't know the answer. Don't beat yourself up. It's not a reflection that you're, dumb. If anything, it's more a reflection that I'm not hitting the point home like I should. So the whole purpose of these reviews, it gives me a chance to make sure you walk away with the key points and a chance to maybe if you can say, hey, I didn't understand this, or, can you clarify this or anything like that. So don't be hard on yourself if you don't know the answer. Repetition is the key to learning. So hopefully maybe hearing it a second time. These just give me a chance to really kind of make sure you're catching the key things. Next to know is that some of the questions may not be related to a series. And I'm doing that on purpose just to kind of get a feel to see if we are, kind of understand some core basic stuff about God, like things in the Bible, people in the Bible in particular. Nothing here, a lot of times I have other friends that go to other churches and they'll just talk about, well, no, I don't know who that person is. Or like, they're just people in the Bible that I feel like, geez, you really should know for a person that goes to church as often as you do. So of course I look in the mirror and think, let me make sure that you guys are knowing certain key, concepts or people. And then just for fun, I thought this is new. I'll kind of be a hint to how hard the question is. I kind of am giving their difficulty levels of rookie, pro, which is a little harder, and then legend, where it's like, well, I expect you to know the answer. Right? So rookie is like, then pro is a little harder. Legend is like, it's a tough question. So we'll have those difficulty levels. Also, you'll see on some of them, I just realized, what might be a rookie question to someone might be a legend level question to somebody else, right? I was thinking of my own self. If you asked me to come look at your family's personal finances to see how you can get out of debt quicker, that's rookie. Or you volunteered a nonprofit. Can you come look at the finances of this nonprofit I volunteer for? Well, that's rookie to me. But if you tell me to come caulk your bathroom, that's like a legend. I can't hang a painting. I can't hang a portrait. So just know that that's okay, that we all are at various levels of our knowledge of the Bible or people in the Bible. So again, what's one person's rookie question could be another person's legend. And so that's okay. So we'll kind of alternate. And again, it's just for fun. And so don't be hard on yourself, and just gets a chance to review. So while I'll pick on one person, raise your hand if you know the answer. Just know that all because you didn't raise your hand, still kind of think to yourself, oh, what was the answer to that? Or what would I say? All right. So yes, someone may answer, but you to yourself think, what would I say? All right. So our first question is rookie level. We'll start on the right. This is more of us this way. So it's rookie level, I think, but don't be embarrassed if you're like, geez, you call that a rookie question? All right. So here we go. From our series entitled The Trinity, How Can God Be in Three Persons? We began by looking at the biblical proof for the Trinity. Right, so this is from that series that, again, I couldn't even tell you. I have to cheat and look at my notes, so that's okay if you don't remember. But we had a series on the Trinity. Point one was looking at the biblical proof or evidence for the Trinity. The first biblical proof we discussed came from the creation account in Genesis chapter 1. In your own words, right? So someone in your own words, what was the proof that God existed as three persons, but yet one, from Genesis 1, and the hint is the creation account. So Genesis 1, I won't tell you the verse because you'll look at it. It's the creation account. And I said, boy, right off the bat, first chapter of the Bible, you see biblical evidence that God is three people in one. Yeah, and raise your hand, by the way, yeah. But everyone think, right? So everyone think, and the reason why we don't want to blur it out, because if you're slow like me, then someone may say it, but just raise your hand. So Cora, what was your answer? And we'll come back to you.
He said we.
Okay.
We will create.
We will create. And do it.
What else made man?
Right.
Us. Perfect. There you go. And Corey, that was right too, right? So everybody got that. So remember, so even though you made, maybe you were on the other side. So yeah, the first right out of the gate, Genesis chapter 1, evidence for the Trinity is the fact that, like Ken said, that God says, let us, plural, make man in our plural image. But yet we clearly know in Genesis 1:1 that in the beginning, God singular created the heavens and the earth. So excellent. Perfect. So on this side, which is kind of unfair. Now, you gotta admit, this is probably legend level, right? But one man's legend, maybe somebody's rookie. Legend level, it's a little more difficult. And oh, by the way, even if it's on this side, you can still be thinking, okay, what would I say? What's the answer? There you go. Yeah, we'll do that too. Yeah, that's true. That's another reason we can do that. So here we go. And I gotta remember to bring some candies. I gotta have something to win. All right, so this is legend level. A critic or person who does not believe in the doctrine of the Trinity would say, quote, so here's what a critic would say, or someone's like, God, how do you believe the Trinity? That Trinity doesn't exist. That's crazy. A critic would say, quote, the use of plural pronouns like us and our in Genesis 1:26, in that verse that we just quoted, let us make mankind in our image. That's how kings used to talk in the Old Testament period. That's an example of a concept that you don't know about, the majestic plural. So the phrase is majestic plural. That's how kings used to talk. It doesn't prove the existence of the Trinity. In your own words, what would you say as a counter to that statement? So we talked about it, but admittedly, and this is why we do the review, I don't think I hammered that home hard enough. So a critic says that, hey, that let us make man, that's just how kings talked in the Old Testament. That doesn't support the Trinity. Do you remember what I said? It's a counter to that legend level question. And even if you know, and by the way, the answer could be maybe not what I said. Maybe you have something else. What would you say if a critic? Oh, you go to church, you let us make man. It has nothing to do with God being more than one person. Kings used to talk like that. Like, we pronounce today that everyone's taxes will be lowered. You have a counter, and that's okay if you don't. One. Again, this is a legend level. Anyone here remember what you would say? And by the way, this is, there are, Christians who don't believe in the Trinity will use this argument I just gave. Anybody remember? And this, again, it was legend level.
David said something about, let my Lord be your Lord. I forget what the other person was.
Yes, So that is in that verse you're quoting. So what Pat is thinking about is David, Psalm 2, or early Psalm, maybe not 2, don't go me. But David says, my Lord, talking about a pre-existing Jesus, said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. That's a powerful verse that supports that Jesus didn't just come into existence on December 25th in Bethlehem, right? So that's an awesome argument that shows that, well, wait a minute, who's this Lord who said to my Lord? So Jesus existed. But the answer to that thing, and again, this is why we had the review, so don't feel bad, because I remember at the time, I'm like, I should have spent more time. A critic of the teaching of the Trinity, who may be someone who goes to church, claims to be a Christian, no claim, drop that, I'm sorry. You may meet people who are Christians or non-Christians who say that, this concept of a Trinity doesn't exist. And you people quote this Genesis 1:26, let us make man in our image. You don't know the Bible. It's called the majestic plural. Kings in the Old Testament time talk like that. The counter to that would be nowhere in the Old Testament does the Bible show a Jewish king using the majestic plural. Right? The Bible does never, ever, ever does the Bible show a new, an Old Testament king from the northern kingdom of Israel or the southern kingdom of Judah using the majestic plural, right? So yes, that's true. The kings used to talk like that. There's a famous quote by Alexander the Great. Sure, yes, Mr. Critic of the Bible. Yes, kings talk like that, but the Bible never uses the majestic plural. No king in the Bible is we, us. So again, it is an argument for that. Great for secular kings, but the Bible never uses majestic plural. Here we go. Let's go stay on this side because you guys got a legend. This is a rookie one. True or false, the word Trinity is used nearly 37 times throughout the Old and New Testament, providing solid proof for the teaching that God is three persons yet one. True or false? Yeah, false. And everybody ever here know that? Yeah. So even though I thought it sounded good, nearly 37 times. So just to review, remember that is false. The word Trinity is never found in the Bible. So again, I'm talking about Christians. There'll be people who Christians are of certain denominations, or just someone who feels like that's just over my head. How can God be three people in one? I don't believe it. So an argument that's often made is, well, there's no such thing as a Trinity in the Bible because the word Trinity isn't there. Look it up. You use a concordance or Google. Look, there's not a single verse that talks about the Trinity. True statement. The word Trinity isn't there, but of course, all throughout is references to it. On this level, this is a pro level. On this side, pro level, it's okay if you don't know the passage reference, like book, chapter, and verse. That's okay if you don't know. In your own words, maybe someone who hasn't answered already, in your own words, what is a New Testament passage or story that provides proof for the teaching of the Trinity? So that's okay if you don't, John 3:16, okay, that's okay if you don't know the verse, just in your own words, that story. What was a passage, an account, either ones that we looked at, and I have two that we did from the series, or maybe your own. What's a passage or story in the New Testament that supports the teaching of the Trinity? Anyone here on this side? One that I thought might quickly come to mind, but that's okay if it doesn't. Was there anyone else besides Cora? A New Testament passage from the series. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Maybe, and I think the one that you might kick yourself when you're like, oh, I remember. So you might not remember the reference, but do you remember an account, a story that supports the Trinity?
Oh,
okay, sure.
If you know me, you know the Father.
Wow. And yeah, that wasn't talked about in the series, but yes, that shows it. Yes. Yeah. Anybody remember? Hint is water was involved. It's a hint. Water was involved.
Can I steal the point?
Yeah, you're right. Ken, it's like, come on, man, give us a chance to steal. Yes, there you go, Ken. I know I'm giving 300 chances. Yeah.
When Jesus was baptized,
Oh, okay, you got that?
the Spirit descended like a dove, and the Father spoke, "This is my Son."
Perfect, right there. That's the one. Like, yeah. So when you have that know-it-all uncle or aunt that's, I still can't believe you believe in the Trinity over Thanksgiving dinner. If you feel like, look, I just want to watch the game and eat, just really into, you can have fun and toy with them. But right there, what Ken said. So that's probably one of the most crystal clear ones, as Ken said, Matthew 3:16-17. You don't have to know the verse, but it's where Jesus is being baptized. So here's Jesus, second person Trinity, a voice from heaven, first person of the Trinity, Holy Spirit landing on this shoulder. Another one, that's okay, John 1:1-3, the verse says, in the beginning was the Word. That word is capitalized, so it's a proper noun. In the beginning was the Word, a title for Jesus. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Okay, so wait a minute, so it's clearly God the Father, Jesus the Son. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He, now given proof that word is a proper noun, he was with God in the beginning. Through him, talking about Jesus, all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. So there you got God the Father is a creator, but here Jesus is a creator. Jesus is with God, yet he was God. And then Genesis 1:2, we all know, or Genesis 1:2, you may or may not know, the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. There's that third person of the Trinity was involved with creation. Great steal. Here on this side, here's a rookie level. Can you recall one of the four? Just one, key thing is just one of the four. I use the phrase feeble illustrations or analogies that seeks to help us understand the Trinity. So I gave four analogies to help us understand the Trinity. You can use one of the four that I gave, but you might know one of your own. Yeah,
Water. You have water.
Okay.
You freeze it as ice. You heat it as steam. But all three are water.
Nice. And yes, even though we didn't use that in the series, that is another famous illustration used. Yes, that was one that I saw and it comes up a bunch. How about on this side? Does anyone on this side, can you think of water? The good news, I think you have four other ones that from the series, but again, water is true. It's still water, though it's in those different states. Anybody remember? Egg. Yeah. That's the most common one. Most famous one is the egg. It's made up of a shell, a white, and a yolk, but it's still just one egg. But we said in all of these, they're kind of feeble in that, but an egg, each one is separate, yet God is one. Did you raise your hand or no? Okay, just moving. So, okay, good. So the other ones were, egg, Water is a good one. 3-leaf clover. Some Bible teachers like to use a 3-leaf clover, but again, it falls short. And then if you pull one of the leaves out, they're separate, not one. You, right? Some people who are term is called trichotomous. Oh yeah.
How about people, body, soul, and spirit?
Hey, you're right on cue. So there we go. Yes, what you just said was the next one. Good thing you caught me. So yes, and so that kind of should give you goosebumps, right? And so what he just said. So a lot of times, people are like, "Oh, I just don't understand it." So because ready, that's always dangerous. Because I don't understand it, it must not be true.
Right.
That's always scary, right? Because again, it's I almost gave away an answer for later on. So yeah, that's always scary. Catch yourself when you walk. I don't understand it, so therefore it must not be true. That's horrible. But you're right. Something that should give you goosebumps is an argument is made that you, critic who can't understand it, you're a triune being. Excellent, excellent. So that's probably my favorite one. That's probably the closest, that you are a physical body, your soul and your spirit. Great answer, yeah. Yeah, you, an egg, light. We said light, even though it's two, it's close. And that light is wave, like sound wave, but it's also particles. So it's, again, it falls short because it's two pieces, but still, you look at light and it's just light. You're not choking over the fact that it's really hitting your eye as both particles and waves. Oh, here we go. And then, yeah, great answer. Here we'll go to this side. It's a pro level, but again, one person's pro is another person's legend. This is really, really important. On this side, can you name one? So just try to name one of the 3 practical applications, like the practical applications we discussed that arise from understanding the teaching of the Trinity. You can give a practical application, but that may not have been discussed as well. Okay, so maybe you're like, well, I don't remember any of the 3 you said, but here we go. So the question is, okay, so God is 3 persons, yet exist in one, and each person is fully God. That's some boring Bible college crap. Who cares? What does that got to do with me? So the question is, well, what's a practical outcome? If God is triune, we gave 3. That's okay if you give one that wasn't one of the 3. From this side, can you name one of the 3 or one of your own, a practical outcome, if it's true that the Bible teaches us that God is 3 people, but yet one? Remember one of the 3? Practical application. I think this one might kick yourself. And just think of it on your own. A hint is, so God is in community, and this side, a chance to steal. I gave 3, but you might think of one that I didn't think of. Practical. Jeez, I swear I have my ringer off. Practical application. Remember, don't get caught up on, geez, what did he say? Maybe just on your own. Here, I'll give you one. What's that?
When we die, because he's one, we are 3 in one. Our spirit and soul, we will go to be with him.
Nice. Here's one, and this is again the point of the review. So here's a good one. This is again, why do we do it? Just to really hit home. Here's one of the 3, and I'll tell you some of the other ones, but this is the one that if you don't remember anything else, this is the one that I'm hoping will stick with you. One practical outcome, the fact that God is triune and your hint is that he lives in community, was this: since God is in community and we are created in his image, we must therefore be in community. The doctrine of the Trinity teaches us that we can't live life alone. So one of the practical applications, one of the big ones, there's 2 others. There's probably tons that I didn't think of, but this is the kind of really take home point is that, man, if the infinite, meaning he, no beginning, no ending, omnipotent, all powerful, all knowing God is in community, how much the more should you and I as finding people? So I know using a basketball analogy, it's a rap song where a guy says, I've been waving off picks since I was 6. So in basketball, if I'm playing, Ken basketball, and we're playing 1-on-1, a pick is when you come over, stand in the way so I can hopefully dribble and make Ken run into you. A pick in basketball is when you help to get your teammate open. Waving off a pick in basketball is you come over, Ken's coming on over to set a pick for Ken so I can hopefully get open. waving off a pick means when I'm telling Kim, well, go away, I can just take Ken one-on-one. Though it's a cool line in a rap song, quote, I've been waving off picks since I was the age of 6, God didn't mean for you to be taking on life one-on-one. If the triune God is in community, he did not mean for us to, well, I'm not going to call for help. I know I can't lift this thing and put it up on the shelf. I can do it on my own self and watch you rip a disc or tear up a muscle. Yes, this happened to me. I'm hurt. I'm devastated by it, but I'm not going to share or ready. So one of the practical outcomes is that the omnipotent, self-sufficient God exists in Trinity. I don't have a choice but to look. You want to get coffee? I haven't talked to you in a while. Can we get coffee? You want to play some board games? I can pull the Uno cards out. We should be in community. Right? God exists in a community. We need to exist in community. Not talking about anyone specific. So much, and I'll preach to myself, Dorian, you. So much of us are trying to go through life, taking on life and the devil one-on-one. When boy, that sure gets easier to have someone in your life. Right. So the fact that God is in community tells us that we should live in community. This hermit lifestyle, the I don't need nobody, which is exasperated or made worse from COVID. Tons of researchers are talking about COVID. Again, one of the side effects of it has taught many people that you don't need anyone. Just get your little, go to work, come home, get your little Chinese to go, pop in some Netflix for the rest of the night, call it a night, repeat, go to work, do something on your own. So again, society is becoming more and more isolated. Yes, it's through technology, working from home. I work from home 3 days a week, but it's crucial to live in community. So that was one practical application. Another one was this you may or may not recall, the teaching of the Trinity teaches us that it's not accurate. It's not accurate to say what I hear all the time. All gods are the same. Y'all just call them different things. So Muslims call them Allah. You, Dorian, you silly Christians call them, God. Jehovah's Witness calls them Jehovah, or you Christians call him Jesus. There's one God. He goes by many names, right? So that statement there, those sounds good, and I hear it a lot, and it's typically in the context, I wish all this fighting and wars would end. People would stop going to war over religion, as if that's the only reason countries go to war and not territory and natural resources. All wars are fought over religion. People need to understand there's only one God, and he just goes by different names. The doctrine of the Trinity shows us that that's not accurate. It sounds good. It's nice and politically correct. But, a Muslim's going to smack you or kick you in the shin if you say, oh, yeah, your Allah is 3 people existing in one, but you just call him Allah, right? A Muslim, a Hindu person, right? So that's one other big thing. We hear it a lot. Oh, you know what? I'm fine. I don't need to hear about your Jesus. I believe in my God. He doesn't go by Jesus, but they're the same. We're all going to end up in the same place when we die if we're good. So the doctrine of the Trinity says that no, the Bible, God revealed in the Bible is not like all the other deities. Famous, a common rhetorical question God asks all throughout the end of the Old Testament is, to whom will you compare me, or who is my equal? And I love that. And one of the reasons why he says that all the time, one of the billion of reasons why God can say, to whom will you compare me, and who is my equal? One of it is just who he is by his nature, a triune being. A third and final one, again, I'm sure there's tons more. Another practical result of the Trinity is that the teaching of the Trinity is proof that the Bible was not just written by man, right? So you have coworkers, colleagues, and stuff that just think that Moses was sitting down at the table and Paul was on the other end of the table. Okay, so I'm going to write something to make Black slaves, women barefoot and pregnant at home, right? So a lot of people think that the Bible was written by chauvinistic, men who just wanted to enslave Blacks and make women oppressed. No, the Bible was given by inspiration of God. Proof that it wasn't just written by man is most of us would write something that we can kind of comprehend. The concept of the Trinity, it's just like no one would have just sat down. The other thing is, again, it's throughout the Bible. We saw accounts of Genesis, Matthew, Isaiah. So all throughout the Bible, written by people in different parts of the Middle East over thousands of years, they all refer to this God of being 3 in 1. So again, the doctrine of the Trinity cuts to the chase. That no, it just wasn't human made. What human would have devised this? Right, here's our next one. This is kind of, like I said, so kind of non-related to a series, just kind of fishing for something to see how I can help. This is, again, rookie, pro, legend level. So depending on your Bible knowledge. This side, you'll go this side. What was the name of the man? What was the name of the man in the Bible, of course, to whom God promised that from his seed, all nations on the earth would be blessed? I have said of this man that if God is the star or best actor of the Bible, blank, the name of this cat, gets best supporting actor. So on this side, yeah, you're raising your hand, so don't show it up. But think to yourself, who was it in the Bible that God promised that meant from your seed, all the nations of the earth would be blessed? If the Bible was a movie, and of course God gets best actor, this cat gets best supporting actor by far. Oh, yeah, Debbie, because you answered, right, Debbie. Oh, nice. Did you think they're on Abraham? Yeah. Oh, and this is an extra. This is legend level. Does anyone know the name of this covenant? The name of the covenant or promise or legal agreement that God made with Abraham? There's a name for that covenant. Mary, what did you say? Oh, you don't want to say it? Yeah. There you go. So you got it. That was a legend. Yeah. So you'll hear there's certain key foundational covenants in the Bible. The Abrahamic is one of them. Yeah. Yeah, so Abrahamic covenant. Yeah, so the heart of that Abrahamic covenant was the promise to Abraham that, look, out of you are going to come all these nations, plural. That's why you're Irish or German or African Americans, but it's still part of true Israel. So God promised to God in the Abrahamic covenant that from you, nations would come forth. Of course, the one specific nation is Israel, but it's anyone who has the faith like Abraham, Irish, German, Italian, you're still part of Israel. And then, but particularly the cornerstone of the Abrahamic covenant was that your seed, singular, of course, reference to Jesus, is going to bless all the nations of the earth. Oh, good. Okay, so Abraham, again, can't overestimate the importance of Abraham. As I was telling Josiah the other day, the fact that you, Josiah, know Christ and is going to go to heaven is the result of God making a promise to Abraham, right? So again, he's super critical. Most New Testament believing churches, we just don't look at him that importantly, even though many of you may know that like all the major religions, or at least, Judaism, Christianity, Islam counts them. All right, so he's just a cat to know. That's good. Another one that's kind of not part of our series. On this side, Pete says to you, if you were really right with God and living the way he wants you to, your life would be nothing but happiness, good money, good health, and all good things as God's promise. Right? So picture Pete in our church comes up to you and says that, right? If you're really right with God, if you're living with God, your life would be nothing but good and blessing. You'd be healthy. Your children would be great. Everything in your life would be great. And the fact that it's not is proof that you're not, living the way God wants. What person or people from the Old Testament, that's what makes it a little harder. What person or people from the Old Testament, what Old Testament passage or story would you use to refute this statement that says, in essence, well, if you were really right with God, you wouldn't be having your diabetes, and you would you'd be having a Mercedes just like me. Your life would be flooded by happiness. So on purpose, the Old Testament, is there a person, and no, this isn't from a series, a person or people? Yeah.
David, the man after God's own heart, but he committed adultery and murder.
Yes, and it's true. And I was thinking, I thought where you're going was, he was a man after God's own heart. You're right. That proves that you can sin, right? You can top shelf, grade A sin that David did and still be a man after God's own heart. But I was thinking more like, David is one person that comes to mind. He's how he loved God clearly, but still suffered. Can you think of a suffering in David? Yeah, here we go. I'll go because I want to hear you. So the question is, we're talking about David, which is one of the people. There's another person that's like the poster child. Hold on. Yes. What were you about to say? You're about to say Job. Okay, so we're going back to, Job was typically would be the first person to come to mind. The Bible says of Job, he was the most righteous person on the planet at that time. Ready? So again, no one here. I hear a lot Christians, and I'll never forget in Indiana. It was a bunch of years ago. I was watching. It was like middle of the night. I couldn't sleep, and so this televangelist, and again, this is out of Indiana. No one here, who was basically saying, the fact that you're sick and the fact that you're not just rolling in money and you don't have a Mercedes like me and my husband, the one was talking, is because you're not right with God. If you were living with God, you wouldn't have any health issues, and everything would be great. Your family would be great. And so you're right. Job is the poster child. The Bible says of Job, he was the most righteous person on the earth at that time. Yet he suffered immensely. The people that don't even know the Bible knows that phrase, patience of Job. Like, oh, Dorian, I'm so sorry. Your Mets lost to the Yankees Friday night. Your dog is sick. You must have the patience of Job. So Job is the poster child that tells us that, well, no, you can be utterly godly. You can be the most righteous person on the planet and still suffer. But of course, we know how Job's story ends. No, the beauty of being right with God is that, yes, your suffering is temporarily, and God comes to your rescue. And Job's life was better, right? At the end, he had more than what he had beforehand. Back to David, just quickly, and that's okay if you don't know. So David is known as the suffering servant. He's the first kind of glimpse of what Jesus would be. David, sure, he had his shortcomings, forces himself on Bathsheba, orchestrates her husband to be killed. But overall, he was a man after God's own heart, who was written Psalms and stuff. But David was godly, but does anyone know or can speak to, well, how did he suffer? The point is, you can be godly and suffer. The question is, how or where do we see David suffering? I have someone else. Yeah, does anyone else know? And good, anyone else know? And that's okay if you don't. And that's what the purpose of this. So David was a man after God's own heart. A lot of Christians and preachers will say, yeah, when you have a person after God's own heart, your life is going to be just nothing but goodness and happiness and wealth and health. How did David suffer? You can think of?
It was chased by Saul.
There we go, right? David was
The mountains and the caves.
chased by
For
Saul.
years.
And the key thing is, a lot of people don't realize that it's years he was on the run. Who else? The really kicker, speaking of our commercial for our upcoming series on Family Matters, he was on the run from Saul, though God had told him he was going to be king, right? God had got a kid chosen from God. You may not know this. That's unfair. I'm looking at you, Kim, from what you watch, but that's okay if you don't know that series you're watching. How else, and especially a lot of us who are having family challenges, who else was David on the run from that really hits home, particularly those of us who might have some strained dynamics with our family? Do you remember? And that's okay if you don't know.
His son.
Yeah. Do you remember? Anybody remember the name of the son that he was running from? Nice. And that's legend level to know that. Remember, that's okay if you don't know the name. Remember, it's God doesn't care if you know the chapter and verse or the name. It's the fact that, can I go to that? So yes, and so that was it for that one. So yeah, just know that to that friend of yours or preacher that tells you and therefore makes you feel bad that, oh, so you didn't get that promotion? It's because you're not walking with God. Oh, you're sick? You have arthritis? Well, it's because you're not right with God. Because if you were right with God, life would be good. Poster child that tells us that's not true is Job from the Old Testament. Another person that came to my mind was David. So in case you may or may not know, David was a man after God's own heart, a godly king, awesome king, chosen because of his character. God knew who he was like, man after his own heart. But yet he was on the run. There's nothing luxurious about living in a cave when Saul's trying to kill you. And then the real hit home for those of us who might have some challenges with their kids or grandkids. Imagine, and I think about this a bunch, my first one, I love Noah to death. I know I use Josiah a bunch, but since he's my first one, I can't imagine being on the run with Josiah trying to kill me. It wasn't just to beat him up and rough him up. Absalom was trying to kill him. So here he's on the run from his own flesh and blood, little baby diaper he changed. I just can't imagine the little kid who I used to throw baseball to, that I changed his diapers, cleaned up his throw up, is now, got a group of men with him trying to kill me. That goes to show you that your life isn't always just peachy keen, and it's not a reflection of your faith or not walking with God. Just here we have the last one. I won't do it in the form of a question. There won't be a question. I just want to tell you to remember that eschatology, someone asking a question, eschatology is the study of end times. So anytime someone is talking about the rapture, Armageddon, how will the world end, the Antichrist, I think Obama's the Antichrist, I think Trump's the Antichrist, this is how the world's going to end, all the water is going to be polluted. All of that falls under eschatology. I won't do it in the form of questions. So the key thing is that there is a study in the Bible about that, but the most important thing to know about eschatology, the study of end times, is that it's nebulous, that I could, you give me enough time, I could write a paper to support this view of how the end times, this view. So there's verses that back up it's nebulous, meaning it's unclear, but there are certain things that are clear about it. And then we always end on this last question. Should the Buffalo Bills call me out of the blue? Not that I've applied. Should the Buffalo Bills call me out of the blue to serve as both their CEO of the Buffalo Bills Foundation and team chaplain? Has to be both. And I take that job. The only way I'd be leaving here, right? Give me both titles, right? Team chaplain, head of the foundation. You'll, in a couple years, forget my name. You'll forget every sermon and Bible study we've ever had. But in your own words, what is the one concept, just the one concept I hope you remember long after y'all like, what's that funny looking dude? He was a pastor from Indiana. I know. What's that one thing I want you to know in your own words? You want to raise your hand? Kim.
Not taking life,
Yeah, it's close enough, yeah. Debbie, do you want to care? So yeah, here's the one concept. You'll forget all my sermons, forget my name.
Between life, blessings, and curses, choose life or death. Choose blessings and choose life.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, and so those of you that might be new or don't remember, I don't know what it is. Yeah, so it's this, ready? So the moment you become conscious, right, every day, I think God gives you grace when you're asleep. All right, so when you're asleep, don't worry about it. But the second you're really starting to function and you're waking up ready, the moment you become conscious, and I'm rereading Deuteronomy right now, so it's screaming in the book of Deuteronomy, but it's from Genesis through Revelation. The moment you become conscious, God sets before you life and death, blessings and curses, and God says choose life. And so what does that mean is life and blessings is a life that's seeking to please God. You're not going to be a saint. David, I mean, can you imagine? It was rape, basically. Forces himself on a woman, gets her pregnant, has her husband killed. Right? So the beauty of the standard of God, Abraham, shows lack of faith tons of times in the Bible, major ones, major lapses of faith. If you have someone impacted by 9/11, that was a result of Abraham's lack of faith. Yet God says Abraham is the poster child of faith. So the good news is God is so gracious. He knows we're going to mess up. He knows our shortcomings. He's more merciful to you than you are on yourself. God is more merciful to you, more patient with you than you are on yourself or what others are. So God says, hey, you want a life marked by life and blessings? Seek to live a life pleasing to God. So when you wake up, you're making decisions that, oh, man, I could do that. Nobody would ever know. Nobody would ever find out. Okay, but God would know. That's not pleasing to God. Right? Choose a life that's pleasing to God. No, you're not going to be a saint or perfect. Then your life will be marked by blessings and life the way you meant it to be. Job tells us, sure, you're going to suffer. Sure, you're going to suffer. But there's a redemptive element to that suffering. God will make it up to you, right? And then now death and curses, death that God talks about by choosing a life of death, it's more serious. Sure, could it lead to it, right? I go mess around with Pete's wife. I could end up on the business end of a gun, right? And I saw that in the newspaper where somebody got killed for cheating around. So death there is more serious than death is where God just says, man, your life is not meant to what it be. It's just the best word to describe it is death and curses. How do I end up that way? By living a life where you don't care about what God says. You're not reading the Bible on your own or coming to church to hear, well, what would God want? So a person who's making decisions of, look, this is what I want to do. I don't care about God. Or I know what I'm doing God wouldn't like, but I'm doing it anyway, right? Great, do that. But God says your life will just be marked by death. Sometimes it does lead to literal physical death, but worse than is your life is just death and curses. But then God says, no, choose life. So again, it's I set before you life and death, blessings and curses, choose life. That could be any clarification from that, let me know. And then again, so next Sunday, I don't know if you got my text, Devin, I meant to follow up. I won't be here next Sunday or else we would have started Family Matters this week. But so then when I come back, we'll start that series on Family Matters. Coming up soon. Yeah, last song.